Hi, Michael Hingson.
Hi, good afternoon.
Michael, you've been blind since birth, and yet you have miraculously escaped the 9/11 terrorist attack from the 78th floor with the help of your dog, Rozelle. And now we have Rozelle's stand-in, Africa, today. Tell us a little bit about that day and how teamwork saved your life.
I think we need to start in a little bit different place. I think we need to start with what you said before about it being miraculous. It was no more miraculous for me to escape than it would be for anyone else to escape. The problem is, or the issue is, that people think it's miraculous because you all believe that the only way to truly function in life is to see and to use your eyes. And you don't understand and have not taken the time nor been shown that in reality people can do a lot more if they use more of their senses. And the fact is that the things that I do, you can do just as well if you learn how to use your ears and your other senses more. So it wasn't really miraculous any more for me than for anyone else, except that I used different techniques to get out of the World Trade Center than most people do. Namely, I use the hearing, my wits, that that allowed me to prepare in advance for dealing with an emergency, although you could never specifically prepare for 9/11. But also the fact that I use a guide dog. I choose to use a guide dog, although I could just as easily use a cane. And going down the stairs with a cane would have been no different than going down the stairs with a guide dog. Okay. There's no big deal to going downstairs with or without eyesight. It's a matter of using different techniques. So cane or dog, those are the two techniques that I have available to me to go downstairs. You're used to doing it with your eyes, but eyesight is not the only game in town. So on 9/11, the team really made a difference because I had to focus on Rozelle. I had to encourage her. I had to continue to send messages to her that I was moving with confidence and wasn't afraid. It didn't matter whether I was afraid or not. I needed to make sure that I didn't indicate to her that I was afraid because I needed her to do her job. Her job is not to know where I want to go or how to get there. Her job was to make sure that we walked safely. So as we went down the stairs, if she had found any obstacles on the stairs, which she did not, then she would have guided me around them or stopped until I figured out what to do.
Wow.
When we're crossing a street, her job is to stop at the street corner until I tell her to go forward, which I do because I hear the traffic going the same way I want to go. Dogs are colorblind. It's not the dog's job to make that decision. On the other hand, as I cross the street, if the dog suddenly jerks back because there's a car coming that didn't stop for the red light, or that was a quiet car or a hybrid car that was coming around making a right turn on red, and I didn't catch it because I didn't hear it, of course, because it didn't make a sound, the dog saw it, I'm going to follow the dog. Really? So we work together, but in general, she's the pilot. Her job is to get us there safely. I'm the navigator. It's my job to know where to go and how to get there.
Okay. Well, what inspired you to write the New York Times best-selling book, Thunderdog?
I wrote the book because people started asking me why I was in the World Trade Center. And what I said to them was, the story isn't really about why I was there and how I got out. The story was how I got there. That is, growing up a blind person, a person who was told all their life that you couldn't do things because you were blind, and a person who was taught by their parents that you can choose to do whatever you want. And as long as you have persistence, as long as you learn what you need to know to do it, you can do it, just like anyone else. You grow up as a sighted person learning to tie your shoes because you watch your parents do it, or learning to cut your food because you watch your parents do it. You learn to brush your teeth, you learn to do a lot of things because you see it on TV or you see your parents do it. I didn't get that luxury because the world isn't really created for blind people. It could be more inclusive, but it's not. So I get my training in other ways. My parents took the time to teach me those things. Sometimes I ask questions. Sometimes other people decided to tell me things that I have been able to use as life lessons. The result of all of that is that I grew up believing that I could do what I want to do, and I could go find out and get the information to do whatever I chose to do. Then, when I got that information, I could do the job. So my reason for writing Thunderdog was to really educate people. Also to help people move on from 9/11. Hopefully people would understand that there are lessons to be learned from 9/11. And probably one of the most important for me is don't worry about what you can't control. Focus on the things that you can control. We couldn't control 9/11 happening. What we could control is how we deal with 9/11, what we decide to learn from it, how we decide to move on from it. And my reason in part for writing Thunderdog was to address those very issues.
Well, now you are a sought-after speaker on subjects of trust and teamwork and turning liabilities into assets. You hold a master's degree in physics from the University of California, and you've worked with inventor Ray Kurzweil. Tell us a little bit about the products that came out of that relationship.
The first invention that Ray had that we all got to associate with was what was called the Kurzweil reading machine for the blind. It literally was the first omni-font optical character recognition system that could take a picture of a page and convert it to voice. It didn't matter what type font or set of type fonts or how many type fonts were on the page. It didn't matter whether it was printed or typed material, the machine would read it. Back in the late 1970s, that was really phenomenal. So he developed this machine. I worked with the National Federation of the Blind, which is the largest organization of blind consumers. Ray approached us, and the Federation created a special foundation grant project. We got funding from a number of foundations. We bought 5 of the machines, the prototypes, put them out where blind people could use them. So literally, laboratory models were taken out of the laboratory and put where people could test them, could learn how to use them, and from that we developed a feature set of recommendations that Ray could use to make a production model. He did that in 1979. The first machines came out. They were pretty expensive. People like Stevie Wonder bought one, but they were still awfully expensive for individuals. On the other hand, he also developed a commercial version of that product, a product that lawyers could use to scan documents if they were working on big lawsuits and litigations of one sort or another. Book publishers could use it to convert old books to computer files. And I ended up, after doing what I did with the NFB and the project ending and went over to Kurzweil, within a few months I was in sales selling the commercial version of that product. So I was not even selling in the blindness arena. I think that was a challenge for me because I hadn't thought about doing that. It was probably a challenge for the company, but Ray basically took the position because he has a good attitude and philosophy about blindness. His position was, why can't you? So suddenly I'm selling to the New England area, I'm selling to Canada, across Canada, and that was my job. Then I moved, I had lived on the West Coast, I moved back to the West Coast later to do other work for Kurzweil.
Wow, that's incredible. Well, now a movie based on the book will be released in 2013. Tell us about the movie's development and how does it feel to have people see that whole story on the big screen?
Well, it's still a work in process. We're working on it. It's pretty exciting. We're working very closely to make sure that the film stays true to the book and that the film stays true to the philosophy about blindness that we want to have. I don't want people getting the wrong idea about blindness. The wrong idea being it was just this miracle and Mike is just this incredible guy. The fact of the matter is a lot of blind people could learn to do the same sorts of things that I do, just like sighted people could learn to do the same things that you do. It's a question of what our gifts are as to how well we can do those things. But blindness isn't the problem. And I want to make sure that we continue to point out that with proper training, blind people can do the same kind of job that anyone else can do and do it just as effectively. We just might use different techniques.
And so really there are a lot of advantages to blindness, not just disadvantages.
Well, I don't know that there are disadvantages as such. I think that we create our disadvantages. And there is the disadvantage that information isn't necessarily as readily available for me. I can't walk down the street and pass a Nordstrom store and know that I'm passing it just because it's there. I have to know it in advance or ask people where's Nordstrom's and find it. I'm picking on Nordstrom's, but it could be anything.
Yes.
But on the new iPhone 5, this is an iPhone 4, but on the iPhone 5 there is technology that exists that if people start to use it more effectively, marketers and so on could actually use the receiving technology on the iPhone 5, and as you're walking up to a store, your iPhone could flash, "Welcome to Nordstrom's, here are the sales of the day that are going on." And if that happened, all that stuff could be accessible for me. So we could make signs accessible for blind people. The biggest challenge I have is getting information, because information is in print, it's made in ways that's not necessarily available to blind people. I think that it is time that society recognizes that we need to be inclusive. Disabilities are usually left out of discussions of so-called diversity. So I adopt the term inclusion, saying that if you're inclusive, you either include everybody or you're not inclusive, and there's no middle ground.
So you wrote Thunderdog together with best-selling author Susie Flory. How did you guys meet, and what were some of the challenges in that project?
She contacted me because she was writing a book called Dog Tales. And when we started talking about my story, she said at one point, "Don't you think you should write your own book?" And I said, "Yeah, we've been actually working on it for a while, but it just hasn't really come together." And she said, "Well, I'd love to help." So we began working together, and Susie became a best-selling author because of it.
Yes.
And I became a best-selling author because it isn't, it was a collaborative effort. I did a lot of the writing. There were other things that I did. Kirkus did a review of the book. And one of the things that they talked about in the Kirkus magazine review was the transitions in the book, because the way the book is laid out, we talk at the beginning of each chapter a little bit about some event on 9/11, then we transition back to areas in my life that helped me prepare for that event, and then we come back and end the chapters with an event of 9/11. Well, the reason that's such a big issue is that when we first submitted it to Thomas Nelson Publishing, to the editor, to Brian Norman to edit, Brian came back and said, "These transitions just aren't really smooth. I suddenly am in places and I don't get led there. And that's going to be a problem for readers." So I said to Susie, "I'll take care of the transitions." And I spent days just looking at each chapter, looking at it, and finally creating the transitions that we eventually used. I did a lot of fact-checking in the book as to what Susie wrote, but I also did a lot of the writing itself. And so it was a collaborative effort. I talk about teamwork a lot when I am out speaking. I travel all over the world talking about teamwork and trust, helping companies develop better team relationships, teaching them what it really truly means to create a team. Well, that's what Susie and I did, and we proved the teamwork concept just in our efforts. We're going to continue that in the future as well.
And yes, you are writing another book, I understand.
We're doing two. One is a children's book version of Thunderdog. I'm working with my children's book writer, Jeanette Hanscom, on that. We're almost done.
Oh, good.
And we're excited about that. But Susie and I are starting on another book. And it's a little early to talk a lot about it, except that we're going to try to continue to be motivating and talking about people and animals who have been put in challenging situations and how they've overcome them. I want to kind of not say a lot more until we know more.
Right.
We're still working on some of the way it's going to come out.
Good.
But we're excited about that. We think it will be a good second step in Thunderdog. We think that it will be a good next part of the story, not only about me, but other people as well. But in the shorter term, we're doing the children's book. That will be out this year. And what we decided to do in that book was to talk a lot more about the training of guide dogs, my training growing up, and how that all eventually came together and what happened on 9/11.
And what does bring you to the Lighthouse for the Blind in Fort Worth today?
Well, I'm actually here all week. The Lighthouse for the Blind has a very positive philosophy about blindness. It, for example, has one of the workshops that I talked about earlier, except that they pay far above minimum wage. The director, Platt Allen, made it real clear that it's not acceptable that blind people shouldn't be getting minimum wage, and that was independent of working with the National Federation of the Blind to deal with that. So we accepted their invitation to come down because they wanted me to come and speak to the Fort Worth community, We're doing a total of 20 events this week, visiting a bunch of
Wow.
schools, visiting some public events, doing some events for donors, meeting with a bunch of blind children on Saturday at the Science and History Museum. Just a lot of different things that are happening over the week that they set up. This started out by them inviting me and saying, well, we'll have you down for a day or so. And I said, fine, and if you find other things, let me know. Well, it kept expanding and expanding, so I flew in Monday and I fly back this following Sunday.
All right.
So
Well,
we're
now-
here for a long time and having a lot of fun, getting a chance to educate people. But it's what I do. I travel not just talking and dealing with blindness organizations. I mean, I've done speeches for AT&T and some of their sales kickoffs. I've done that for other companies. I've spoken to concrete construction companies and motivating people. I've spoken to Federal Express. I've spoken to ExxonMobil and motivating their safety people and talking about safety and disaster preparedness. So I do that partly using the 9/11 story and partly just educating them about things they could do in their own world to be more prepared and to think better.
And inspiration internationally. What is it, one thing that you maybe want the audiences to come away with that you've talked to?
Blindness isn't the handicap, and you all are just as disabled as I because you're light dependent. You don't do well in the dark. Thomas Edison fixed it for you by inventing the electric light bulb. But make no mistake about it, you have your own challenges. It's just that they're mostly covered up. Mine don't tend to be as covered up, but it doesn't mean that I am any less of a person than you. And if you'd like to learn about it, and if you'd like to carry on the discussion, we're available to come and speak and talk about it. And of course, wherever we go, we always bring copies of Thunderdog.
Ah, good.
And every
Okay.
book that we provide, by the way, on my website. Thunderdog is available anywhere books are sold, of course. So you can get it from Barnes & Noble, you can get it from Amazon.com and so on. But anybody who buys it from our website not only gets the book with my autograph, but gets Rozelle's paw print, her potograph.
All right. Okay, Michael Hingson, thank you very much for talking with us today.
Well, my pleasure. People can visit us at www.michaelhingson.com, MichaelHingson.com. Friend us on Facebook. We love that. We'd love to meet you. You can email me at info@michaelhingson.com. We'd love to chat, and hopefully we can inspire some more.
Thank you. Michael Hingson, best-selling author of Thunderdog and internationally recognized motivational speaker.